Folks, we'll get started in about 2 minutes or so. There is a public meeting notes document at the top of the invite for this meeting that you're welcome to go in and add yourself and add topics or anything else. Thanks, Eric. All right, let's get started. Welcome, everybody, to the July 20th public meeting for Alpha Omega. Purpose of this meeting is to basically answer any questions, talk about what we've been up to, but this is better when it's interactive. So if you have questions or things burning, feel free to we can spend most of the time chatting about stuff like that. I do have a short deck. I think Michael Windsor should be here, so when he joins, he can, pop in and talk as well. Brian, obviously anybody associated with the project, welcome to take me to slides. So without further ado, if you do have things that you want to talk about and not forget, you can add them to the deck, add them to chat, whatever, or just kind of start talking. That was my welcome. Project updates. So hiring, we are still hiring. Are still attempting to hire. Hiring we've learned is more challenging than we thought it would be when we set out here. So we still have 3 roles available: the lead PM, security engineer, and security researcher. We are pursuing candidates in these and are looking at alternative models to resource these earlier. But if you or anyone you know is interested in applying for these, please send them to the link on openssf.org and share with your networks and things like that. So we really appreciate that. Right now, I think the biggest impediment to moving faster is hours in the day. So more people means more hours. On the Alpha side, so I hope you're all aware that we announced Node back in, is it April? Just a couple months ago. So OpenJS, Robin Jin posted an update on kind of where they are. So there's a link to that in the deck. I encourage you to read that. And then at the OpenSSF Day last month in Austin, we announced similar engagements with Python and with Eclipse. So they're both similar dollar amount. I think the second 2 are $400K each, and doing kind of similar things. So this is starting to become a pattern. Node posted another progress report up to our GitHub page, so the Alpha Omega page under OpenSSF, and we'll probably use that as the model for the other ones going forward. Just to be clear, neither Python nor Eclipse have actually received the money yet. We're working through the paperwork and things like that. So we probably expect the first update to probably be September, if I could guess. But those, in any case, those would be monthly updates, almost certainly. On the Omega side, I know I promised a tool chain. I'm sorry, it is still pending. And it's just pending legal approval for distributing a Docker image that contains CodeQL, because CodeQL is not open source, and the image that and the repository that we want to distribute is open source. I just want to be super clear that I'm not like trying to relicense something that's proprietary as open source or anything like that. So it's purely with that. We've had a couple of vulnerabilities though, even in advance of hiring. So Node released an update on July 7th with a fix for a vulnerability that we found. It was kind of a simple, or not super interesting, but when Node started up, it looked for an OpenSSL configuration file in a hard-coded directory /home/iojs. Presumably, if it usually didn't find that file, and it continued fine, but I suspect that if it did find the file, it would read it and use that as a configuration for OpenSSL, which could be bad. So they fixed that super fast, which was terrific. We found an RCE in JS hint. This was actually in an unused build script, so they just removed the script. So that was fixed in a commit. We don't have a CVE because it was never really released as a package. And then we have 3 more. Actually, that's 4 more. So 2 that are awaiting a CVE kind of disclosure. These have been acknowledged, and I believe they've been fixed, but they haven't been like formally packaged and updated. So I need to follow up with the maintainer there. And then 2 more that we distributed yesterday to the maintainers. Any questions there? Cool. For Omega Tracer, so I posted a note out on the Slack channel, I think it was over the weekend. The way that we found the Node.js CVE was by doing a system call trace during startup, during Node starting up. So I thought that was interesting, and perhaps that same kind of anti-pattern showed up somewhere else. So right now we are running every Ubuntu package through this kind of similar tracer. And what we're doing is we're actually capturing the full strace log for each binary in each package. So we have, I just ran this, so I should have the number now. We have 6,200 packages done. Those should all be at that GitHub repo. I'm obviously going to move that over to OpenSSF once this advances a little bit further. It's possible that after we do all of this work, we realize that, nope, this was just a really rare one-off and there's nothing to see here, in which case we've learned something, but probably not super useful, to continue or expand. Also, actually, I'll give this one to Michael.
Hello. Sorry I was a little bit late.
It's all good.
Yeah. So we're super happy to welcome SOS.dev. This program was originally funded by Google to basically really create a fund to help reward individuals who were making improvements, fixing bugs, notably security bugs in open source projects. And we see it as a natural fit to the Alpha Omega effort. The SOS.dev folks who have been administering this, some combination of working group people and Googlers agreed. So we're joining forces. There's not a lot of impact to anything that's happening right now, but we see an opportunity to kind of increase the visibility. Many people have not even heard of SOS.dev. And for it to just to be, as I said, a natural extension of what we're already doing within Alpha Omega. We will evolve it as we figure out more and learn, but this is where we are today. Certainly hoping that people will go, what is that thing? Great, let me go learn more. So please go to sos.dev, see a bit more there, and don't hesitate to come back with feedback as well in terms of how you think we could make it better. So
terrific. So I think at each of these public sessions, we get the question like, how can I participate? And this is what we got right now. So we do expect this to expand and get better over time and have more specific areas that folks can contribute. But obviously with SOS.dev now being a part, like if you're interested in finding vulnerabilities in open source, go and do it. Not that you couldn't have done it before, but now you can do it and get a little bit of cash out of it. So encourage folks to leverage SOS.dev. Security tools, as soon as the Omega tool chain is out, please contribute, run it, test it, improve it, all that. The underlying tools, practically all of them are open source anyway, and even CodeQL, the rules are, I believe the rules are all technically open source. Contribute to those, run them, test them, like just help advance tooling in general. Join the discussion in either the Alpha Omega Slack channel or any of the working groups, particularly the Critical Projects Working Group, since both Alpha and Omega take their list fundamentally from the critical projects. Having a better idea of what is critical means that we can focus our limited funds and energy on the ones that really matter. Now it's time for open discussion. What do you guys want to talk about?
You could kill the presentation, Michael, so that we can see people.
Nice, perfect.
Yeah.
Have to be some questions. I know it's early.
Just so the participants know, if nobody asks a question, we'll start asking questions of the participants. It's an equal opportunity questioning exam. Amir, you're smiling, therefore you're in a good mood, and you've had some sort of pre-morning stimulant as needed. What's going on? You don't have a question. Just tell us what's going on in your end of the world.
Hello, good morning. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for the fantastic update. And I think the SOS is definitely a good move. We've been working with the SOS folks, and they definitely seem very keen on, fulfilling that mission of getting support to the people who are doing this kind of work. So nice job on that. No, everything is sounding really good. I don't have really a good question to ask to really kind of get some discussion going, but just love the effort that you guys are making and the progress that y'all have made so far. And
instead of a question, perhaps an update from what's happening in OSTIP. I mean, you guys are obviously immersed in the same problem domain. We're partners in this journey. What's going on with you folks? And very casual deal, but like just what top of mind to you?
Totally, yeah. We've actually had a pretty busy week. This week and last, we released about 4 to 5, I think it was, audit results for a bunch of different projects. And thankfully, we were able to do a lot. So within the last 2 weeks, we've had about 41 security improvements. 18 of those are CVEs, one of which is a critical CVE, and 6 high and 11 moderate. These are just vulnerabilities and denial of service vectors, cross-site scripting vectors, path traversals, things like that. So so we are just cranking on all cylinders and cranking out audits with our work with OpenSSF, with Google's open source security team and CNCF. And so we're out here doing it, and thankfully we're producing results pretty consistently and finding vulnerabilities at a pretty high, finding and fixing vulnerabilities at a really high rate. So I'm glad to be kind of in the same conversation as you all and the efforts that you guys are doing, and continuing to explore ways to make this whole thing better. So
Awesome.
I love that. And so speaking of the audits, I'm super interested in learning what happens after these audits, right? Like we've been partnering with various foundations, and the first thing they want to do is an audit as well, and we're super keen to help that happen. I'm looking forward to like the journey of post-audit. How well does an audit help an organization adjust? So, and again, any thoughts you have there would be very interesting. And then I'll shut up and let other people jump in.
Yeah, no, actually, it's a great question. I'm glad you asked, because I'm actually working on kind of getting some of this down on paper to share with people so that they can, join the conversation. But I would say really there's two main benefits to audits. There's the immediate post-audit benefits, which are having a fixed kind of focused engagement where maintainers are thinking about security. They're working with security experts in answering questions and really kind of painting a picture of their project's security posture and what have you. And then, of course, there's the fixed vulnerabilities. And the beauty is, at least the way we've been able to do it, is when it's a strong collaborative effort, we found that a lot of the bugs that are fixed are actually classes of bugs where, folks, auditors are finding like design flaws or consistent themes. And so by working with maintainers to close those, they're effectively eliminating an entire class of bugs and problems from arising in the future, which is extremely helpful. And then one thing, especially recently, we've been building fuzzers and integrating projects into OSS Fuzz as part of the audit, so that they have new and improved fuzzers results, so that their project is constantly being monitored too. So it's not just a one point in time type of thing. And then lastly, some of those more long-term benefits come from, as I mentioned, the improved tooling, closed classes of bugs. And then, of course, we recommend projects on a risk-based schedule, if they have a huge new release, ton of new code or something like that, or if it's something that's just extremely critical, putting it on basically an audit schedule. So maybe revisiting it in 1 year, 2 years, or however many years to maybe review new features, green code, and audit that, and basically continuously provide that service for projects. So yeah, I would say, especially a lot of folks that think an audit's just kind of like one and done kind of a thing. I think it can be if it's just a bunch of people coming in and dumping bug reports on a project, but when it's done with a lot of care and management, where it's really a collaboration, we're seeing both immediate and long-term benefits to projects.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
So I have a question about SOS Dev, actually. So which means this is a question for Michael rather than Michael. SOS Dev looks like, just briefly skimmed it only on this call. It looks like something that would be a really good way for people to be able to contribute to this effort. But the remuneration part of it might be problematic if people are coming from a corporation, where there could be conflict of interest. I'm doing this on company time, and then I'm also getting paid on the side. So are there accommodations within SOS Dev to not get that reward, or to instead shunt it towards some nonprofit or other good endeavor? So is that an option, or how does that work for people who are in corporate jobs?
It's a good question. I don't have, I cannot give you the authoritative answer. I will find out. The simplest answer is do the great work, tell us you did the work, don't claim a reward. And then the money remains in a nonprofit that is designed to continue providing these rewards. In other words, like the money's still there, it's still going to a good purpose. If somebody wanted to direct the money to some particular thing, that actually has its own set of implications, because now money is being routed on behalf of the corporation. So I think what would be nice is to value, what you reward increases, what you appreciate appreciates, right? And so as individuals take time, or as corporations allow individuals to take time and make fixes in the small across this is the very long tail of the problem space. It would be nice for that work to be valued and appreciated, so that people want to do more of it. And I think that it would be, I will discuss it with the SOS folks, and then we'll sort of bring into the broader conversation of a wall of fame of here are the contributors, whether they took money or not is sort of a separate issue. And then having raised this conversation up to another level, I'm like, okay, do we need to have a policy about conflict of interest, something like that? And for now, I think we're probably okay if we rely on the individuals to sort of manage their own ethics rather than trying to be an ethics police for every individual and every corporation. But it's something worth thinking about. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think if nothing else, it's at least worth mentioning on there. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, go check your policy, make sure you're not in conflict of interest, because a lot of developers are well-intentioned, but just aren't as aware of that policy, right? And so asking them to go do their homework would be
Are
great.
you saying that people who are paid just to write code just want to write code and not know about all this other stuff that's in the way? It's crazy.
I would never say that, Michael.
Who'd have thunk?
Thanks for the question. You know, you've seen what I did to Amir. So if someone doesn't pipe up with something, I'm going to pick somebody randomly from a list and, you know, make up a question.
That's why I'm talking, but I'm on mute. I'm like, everybody's ignoring me. This is Amir, so when audits get done, there are big, weird design flaws that you can only pull out by like thinking hard about the problem. And then there were like coding flaws that presumably a tool could find, but obviously either wasn't run or didn't find it. And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity maybe for OpenSSF to collect essentially like a wish list of, you know, I wish that a tool had found this type of vulnerability, or which tool would find this vulnerability, and kind of use that, you know, so that future audits wouldn't find that issue in theory because a tool was run and found it much earlier. Like, I'm just wondering, I mean, I guess you could go through the audit reports and say, oh, this was the change. Oh, if I would have just done this, you know, pattern, I would have looked for this pattern. I would have found the issue. But I'm wondering if there's anything, if there's an opportunity there. I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'll do my best to answer briefly, and then I'd love to go to David, who's had his hand up for a minute. But yes, the audit reports, I mean, a big benefit of advocating for transparency and publishing a report at the end of the engagement for the public to consume. I think one of the big benefits is that, you know, other projects or project maintainers can review these reports and read them and almost use them as case studies for, oh, you know, hey, they're doing something kind of similar to what we're doing, and this is kind of what happened, and we were able to make improvements as a result. Kind of like how like our work with on Cryo ended up actually helping Containerd with patching a high severity bug too. So in terms of like a wish list of tools, it's a good point. The one thing that I know that we really try to focus on is understanding that every project is different and at a different maturity level, and that, you know, that for these audits to be effective, it really has to be very catered to that project and their practices. So we really don't see a lot of like really two audits kind of playing out the same way, but I'm sure as we do more, you know, we'll probably see more consistencies, maybe like, for example, fuzzing being, you know, very popular and a great tool, you know, to use for kind of continuously monitoring a project. And so I'm sure our methods will develop, and we'll have more data as we do more engagements.
Terrific. Sorry, David.
Yes, thanks. I mean, two things. One regarding the funding issue. I mean, just to keep in mind for you and Michael is allowing people to, let's say, direct funds, or I hope the SOS would allow people to direct funds to, let's say, a charity. Say, okay, I can't accept it, but you know, they could feel the benefit that way, and the reward, the acclaim by saying, okay, you know, I can't accept it directly for whatever conflict, but you know, give it to, you know, this officially accepted, 501c3 charity that I choose. Is one way to handle that potential conflict of interest. But the question I actually had for you is, it seems with all of this stuff and all these great projects, great working groups at the OpenSSF, I mean, we've got the different pieces of the scorecards, Alpha Omega, securing critical projects. How are we, or how are you, or all OpenSSF? I mean, don't ask Brian. Brian can stay on mute. But how to. It almost seems like there is an implicit pipeline here, but we haven't made it explicit. I mean, how are these are different parts of the elephant, and how is this going to evolve to actually some sort of a handoff and some sort of okay, we found this vulnerability, and then okay, Alpha Omega should fund it, and this should do it. I mean, it seems like there are pieces here, but they're all, at least they seem independent still. And how can this evolve to something that's more of a, coordinated, or I mean, not. I don't want to make this too bureaucratic, but somehow that there is a pipeline here of how these different work groups are all fitting together.
Well, you invoked me, so I feel obligated to respond.
No, you stay on mute. You stay on mute. I want to.
No, oh, you want me to stay on mute? Okay, I can do that. No, I'll just give my take really quick then, which is I'm a pretty firm believer in small pieces loosely joined, right? And even I'm a latecomer to the OpenSSF community, relatively speaking, right? I just came in, parachuted in September of last year, and what I already saw as key to the success, even to that point of OpenSSF, was this kind of open-ended, like, hey, show up and start working, and if it makes sense, we'll give you a space to do it in, and we'll park folks under thematically related working groups, and some projects like Alpha Omega or SigStore actually are ambitious enough that they kind of need their own persistent funding, and so let's try to create something to support them. It's been a little ad hoc, but it hasn't been random, right? It has been very much about allowing folks to be kind of the masters of their own domain, or make their own independent decisions about priorities and what to accomplish next, without having an overarching top-down view of if this then that, right? And I, at least from my point of view, like, I'm here to facilitate the community and allow for the 1,000 flowers to bloom wherever they're going to bloom. And every time I do try to introduce a little bit of process, I get pushed back for being over prescriptive. So I'm going to go with the flow here a little bit and say, let's figure it out as we go. At the same time, the most important thing is having everyone be aware, at least, of everyone else's complementary efforts. And I know that the two Michaels are deeply enmeshed inside of the different related working groups and the like, and are constantly going, well, maybe we'll work with them on this or work with them on that. So I think as long as we have that, we kind of don't need the overarching programmatic business process modeling that otherwise might be called for.
I think if I'll chime in as well, I generally agree with what Brian is saying. Like, when you know how to hook the pieces up because you've done this 1,000 times, then you can start to get a bit more opinionated about it. There's a specific workflow that I think is poorly addressed today in the industry. And I don't know how to solve it. But if you think of so you found a vulnerability, right? You're now in this weird thing where you've got this sort of nasty piece of radioactive material, right? Nobody wants it in their backyard. If you want to have this stuff, you're almost implicitly unqualified or disqualified from having it because you're trying to make bad things out of it, as opposed to find a way to make it not blow up the world, right? And, right now we are, as an industry, surviving on some combination of spreadsheets, emails, and, personal web of trust for communication around these things. And we all know that at a certain point of scale, things change dramatically in behavior and become much less effective. We are approaching that problem. On my ridiculously long backlog of things to do or to have somebody do when we can hire somebody, we're hiring. Did Michael mention we're hiring? Is to sit down with the folks at CERT and the Vince project, or whatever it's called, which is the tool they use for managing, vulnerability disclosures at that level. Can we start to build workflows that allow us to create trusts and communications without conveying all the details, but have information and then access managed and like that? Lots of interesting hard problems there. which sort of embody the 10 interesting problems in computer science, caching, naming, and off by one errors. You know, I don't know if I don't even know if like I could tell you what the right answer is right now. So I feel like evolving that before trying to build it is part of the journey.
No, I'm not saying the right answer. I mean, but I guess what I'm saying is that in some ways, Alpha Omega, I mean, with this great report from Michael, I mean, about, you know, these projects there, you know, Node.js and Python Software Foundation that they're funding, but in some ways, this, you know, securing critical projects is looking at the critical projects, which then Alpha Omega could fund. So I'm just, you know, saying that in some ways, you know, I mean, not that it's, I mean, it's great selection. I'm just saying that the selection of these projects, like Alpha Omega selecting its projects, and Scorecard selecting its projects, and this is selecting its projects. And I'm not trying to, I'm not suggesting a bureaucracy. I'm not saying, okay, we need to make this top down. I'm just suggesting that that's what I mean by different parts of the elephant, that, you know, how do, you know, informally, you know, other than these sorts of meetings and these great relationships that OpenSSF itself is creating, this communication flow is creating, to sort of ensure that there is this communication. And it also doesn't look like, well, you know, this is my favorite set of projects, and I'm leading out, I'm funding this, and this is my favorite set of projects, we'll get them funded. And it doesn't turn into all these little fiefdoms.
Right.
I mean, again, not that it is, just
yeah.
Just,
I agree. So perception matters. So, you know, of funding, you know, Python, Eclipse, and Node, like if our fourth project is like the random calendar widget for an old version of Joomla, like people are going to say like, why did you choose that? Like, obviously not in the same class as the others. So, but there is a little bit more method to the madness, I guess. So Critical Projects Working Group does have a list of critical projects. That is kind of the first filtering. Like if we find something that isn't on there, now maybe it's because thematically, like they didn't look at like build systems, and maybe Jenkins is at the top of the actual list, but not the top of their list. So we'd be thoughtful about that. But generally speaking, like we do, like that is our first filter. Now, should we be more transparent and explicit about that? Absolutely. Do we want to be bound to any explicit list? Not really. We want to have a little bit more autonomy than that. But we recognize that, yeah, if we you know, if all the CVEs that we find in the next year are against very long tail projects, someone should ask us, like, what's the actual impact that this funding has done? And if we can't articulate that, you know, that would be sad, but, you know, but yeah, now I do think, so one of the things that I would like to do as we get hiring done and we get more bandwidth is kind of having a, as Michael mentioned, kind of a Hall of Fame page where it's like the things that we found and like specifically like what we targeted and why we chose that and the method and the rationale. So yeah, but I do also agree with Brian that the, you know, letting 1,000 flowers bloom is the big advantage of OpenSSF, where, you know, for the most part, until you ask for money, as long as you're generally in the ballpark of what your working group kind of charter is, it's like, go do it.
So let me jump in here. Hi, I'm Munawar Hafiz. I'm new to the group. I have been, so my philosophy has been also like what Brian has been articulating, as in show up and start working. So I've been working with Michael 1 in order of appearance today. So what?
Wait, there's another Michael 1? What?
So yeah, so I'm the CEO of Open Refractory. We are building a better bug detection tool, and so our tool works on right now Java, Python, and C. So what I've been proposing Michael, and that probably has like found its way to Michael too, and also Brian, is that we want to scan, let's say, the PyPy repository and identify bugs and present the bugs to the to the maintainers, and then let them like somehow nudge them to fix the vulnerabilities and so on. The reason why we claim or we hope that our tool can scale to such an effort, like the PyPy repository right now has 3.5 million artifacts or different things that are hosted there, is because our false positive rate is dramatically lower than all the other static analysis tools that are out there. So what will be generating is a lot of good data, not necessarily a lot of noise. Therefore, there can be like triaging, etc., that can be done in a feasible way without bothering people. And in the end, the results that we are generating, it is supposed to be distributed to the maintainers at that point. So that's the only way it can scale. There is no single authority that can go over all of these bug reports. However, like even if we generate one, that's 3.5 million reports that we're generating, one per project. But anyway, so if that is moved to the, so what I'm trying to figure out, so we have just created a dump of like we scan like 100 projects from PyPy repository. I've shared that data. It's available on a public website. I've shared the data with Michael. So I am trying to find out, as David was pointing out, is what to do next, as in how do we coordinate? Like, have you guys, as I understand is you guys are also figuring out in real time, as in how would this data be sent to the maintainers? How would the coordination be done? How would we, or you guys be nudging them into fixing the vulnerabilities and so on? And of course, like our selfish interest is to make our brand well known and everybody knows about us. Everybody thinks we are great. I mean, of course, there's that selfish interest, but at the same time, there's a whole lot of very small. We don't know. Like until we dig into each of these bugs, some of these can turn out to be something bad. But at itself, from the reports, like I've looked into the general reports, there are many bugs per project that needs to be fixed. Maybe not high security yet. We're also focusing on reliability, compliance, etc., those kind of stuff. But that's fine. At least like these bugs needs to be fixed, and because it's a distributed effort, if the maintainers are aware of it, they should be like putting it as part of their next release cycle and so on. So I would like to know about like what is the coordination as well, and basically how do we then use the data and make it the beneficial for the actual maintainers and overall make the software world better.
So I'll start there. Nothing would make me happier than to have the Omega side of this kind of evaporate out, out of existence, because the tools are so ubiquitous and high quality and maintainers are fixing that there's simply nothing left for us to do. I'm not super optimistic that will happen anytime soon, but I do strongly support better tooling in the hands of maintainers. We don't need to be in the loop if we're not providing value. So for things like Open Refactory and when we chatted, as I said this, but the other kind of tooling vendors have approached us similarly and said, hey, we have a really sharp tool. We can scan a lot of stuff. How can we partner together? And we're still trying to figure that out. Like some of it is just a matter of just bandwidth. Like it takes time to triage these things and to write a report. But just full disclosure, one of the vulnerabilities that were reported yesterday was found with Open Refactory. So there's that's one data point, but it's a there is something there. So what I don't know what the process should look like. So I don't want to kind of design this on the fly, but being able to, number one, get high quality vulnerability reports, validate them, triage them, and report them is kind of what Omega is about. Now, whether or not we are running the tool or we are just getting the output that someone else ran, like Open Refactory or whoever else, it doesn't really matter. Like we don't need to like burn the carbon ourselves. Someone else can do it. But at the same time, the best case scenario is, it goes right back into, because it's so high quality, it goes right back to a pull request or an issue or Vince or something where we're not even in the loop, unless there's something for us to do. So, unofficially, I'm happy to help kind of triage and provide feedback. And I've got some feedback for you that I'll send over later this week. So yeah, let's do it. But it'll probably be a quarter or so after we have a security researcher and engineer hired before we'll be able to like formalize what that process should look like. I think.
Yeah, part of that is also what David was pointing out, as in, so I'm fairly new to this is the first time I'm attending the meeting. I've been intending to do that for personal reasons, and also, yeah, I mean, I was not able to attend the last 2 meetings, but I'm following up on the like by watching the videos and so on. But I mean, so I just found out about this like critical so what are the working group meetings that I should go and attend? I mean, there is I mean, I just learned about Amir's work, and I think like I should definitely probably like chat with him like in a separate channel and see like what they are doing, and see like whether like it seems like there's some sort of like auditing, etc., that's going on. This is probably is it part of the security scorecards thing or something else?
Security scorecards is part of securing critical projects, and we have used the scorecard to give us insight into projects. Yep.
Okay, but anyway, as you see from my naivete, is like the lay of the land is not necessarily clear. So, so yeah, I mean that's something that what David was pointing out is perhaps like if like some sort of descriptions of like how these projects are even loosely coordinated, that would allow newbies like us to find and the hotspots, like Alpha Omega, the charter. When I read it, I just felt like this is the perfect place where I should just come and attend and learn from you guys. But at the same time, what are the other ones that would be also tangentially related and I should also pay attention to? So that's I think a common problem that people who are new would have, and that's what David has pointed out. Yes.
Yeah. I know, Brian, I don't know if you have a more official answer. I mean, we should have a town hall pretty soon. And at the previous town halls, we kind of went, from left to right across everything that we're doing, and at least mentioned it. And so the one from February, it's 6 months old, but that's something. We should have a map of like, here's all the stuff that's going on. I know that the TAC is actively interested in the similar thing. So the working groups are starting to report back to the TAC on what we're doing, presumably so the TAC can have a full view of it, and having them kind of publish that out in some way, I think would make sense. There aren't that many working groups though. So what I would encourage you to, and all the meeting minutes are public. So it's not as easy as like a one pager that's just like, here's everything. It also evolves over time. So if there's something that you are specifically looking for, like post it in the general chat in Slack and say, hey, I'm interested in whatever, Kubernetes security. And is anybody working on Kubernetes security? And someone will pop up and say, yep, we're doing it over here.
Well, and here is the one pager that talks about at least what the working groups are doing. Look, part of the challenge of the circus is, there are lots of things going on simultaneously, different places, but there are a couple of different ways to try to aggregate and figure out where to focus your time, because you want to. I think everyone wants to not waste their time. They want to find what's interesting to them, and I think. You can take the top-down view, which is start at the website, start at the top of the TAC GitHub repo, and cascade downward, kind of, what is it, depth first search, to kind of see what's interesting out there and what rings the bell for you. And frankly, I think just figuring out what creates enough value for you, or to that you start using it in your day job, is a good way to turn back around and go, where should I prioritize spending my time volunteering? and feeding back upstream too, right? So anyway, so those are some places. You could also just read through the blog. We try to be, put a few things there each week of new things happening across OpenSSF. So if you want to see, kind of a activity first search of what's going on, that might be another way to go. That was the basic question, right? Discoverability and how do the pieces fit together and that sort of thing, like where to get started. I think there's probably that where to get started. We could always do more with when people land at the website, but more that we could try to do there. But hopefully that's helpful. I'll check that link out. Thanks, Munawar. Sorry.
All right, I threatened for more questions, but I think we've reached a useful conclusion to today's conversation. If anybody speak now or for 15 minutes, hold your peace. 13 minutes back, everybody. Thanks again for attending, coming, showing up. Always appreciate to have either listeners or conversations or whatever. And don't hesitate to send out feedback or jump onto the Slack channel with thoughts.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Everyone.